You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs from my generation. I'll take the fall, the saints, the confirmation. And it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the frauds, they're messing with me. Come on, come on, come on, let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome back to Reliving the War, and welcome to the 5th of October 1998. We've got Raw coming from East Lansing, Michigan tonight, while Nitro's in Columbia, South Carolina. The shows are absolutely stacked again this week, so hopefully it's gonna be a good one. This week's jam-up guy is Sir Tall Marc, who wanted to send me this in the post. I wasn't quick enough to reply, but he posted it on Twitter. This is an OPG 1985 WWF trading card of the Bulldog Grip. What is the Bulldog Grip, you may ask? Well, it's the This is now the rarest trading card in wrestling history, and hopefully its worth has now been inflated by 20,000 Canadian dollars. Thank you, Marc, for sharing this little beauty. On with the show then. Let's see what's happening over on Monday Nitro. The WCW commentators, decked out in pretty sick WCW shirts, announced a Bret Hart vs Sting main event for Nitro tonight before talking about how Bret Hart conned everyone and how Bret Hart is a master manipulator. Sting vs the Hitman's a big one though, and no doubt it's a match that many people wanted to see. Our opening match featured Perry Saturn taking on Lizmark Jr. Lizmark started off strong, but a sit-out suplex slam from Perry quickly turned things around. Saturn performs the Death Valley Driver, and it's over in 2.5 minutes. Ernest Miller gave Kaz Hayashi 5 seconds to leave the ring. Either that or young Kaz will have to face a 3-time World Karate Champion. Again, the match went on for about 2.5 minutes, and it pretty much played out like the Saturn match. The underdog fires up for a bit, but he can't overcome the bigger star. This moment here could have been awesome, but the cat was a little off with his kick. The camera angle didn't help matters either. After this jump kick, Ernest lands another kick to Kaz's chest, and Cat wins another one on Nitro. He's building himself quite the winning streak on WCW lately. Sonny Ono compliments Miller. Miller's happy to receive said compliments, and Kaz Hayashi gets left high and dry by his own manager. It looks like Sonny Ono's now aligned himself with Ernie Miller. 20 minutes of Nitro's passed, and we've only had 2 very quick matches and no promos. They've been playing a lot of hype videos for Halloween Havoc, which is weird seeing as the show's still around 3 weeks away. Juventud Guerrera vs Jerry Flynn was spared an extra 30 seconds or so. Yay, I guess. Disco Inferno took over Mike Tenay's spot on commentary to talk about Juventud Guerrera, or as Disco likes to call him, Juventud Guerrera. Guerrera said Disco faked his way in and he's not the correct weight to compete for the cruiserweight belt, but Disco says he's slim in the waist and cute in the face. These cruiserweight bozos are going down to the Disco Inferno. After a dive from the top rope to the outside, Guerrera brings Jerry Flynn with an F back into the ring for a hoovy driver. Guerrera wins via pinfall. Incredibly, WCW airs more Halloween Havoc hype videos. They've played 4 in total within 30 minutes, but in between these hype videos we're treated to Mike Tenay partaking in another WCW mid-card barbecue. I've missed these. This little dude thinks Goldberg will beat DDP at the pay-per-view. This dude also thinks Goldberg's gonna win. Your mom's a big DDP mark, so she's hoping to feel the bang. And this ferret right here is a little torn, but he eventually decides that Goldberg's gonna win at Halloween Havoc. Like clockwork, Wrath comes out for his weekly R1 match. This time he took on Villano V. Wrath impresses with a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker and this jumping back elbow from the apron back into the ring. Villano V tried, but he just couldn't hurt Wrath. The big man wins it with a meltdown. Halloween Havoc hype video number 5 then plays, not even joking. We see David Flair in attendance tonight wearing his Goldberg shirt, but the commentators don't mention who David is. And Mike Tenay's feeling hungry, so he goes outside for another mid-card barbecue.
When it comes down to it, Goldberg is gonna get bang! 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 Yeah!
The Wolfpac pulled up to the arena, and after Nash and Sting got their asses kicked last week, they aren't in a very good mood. They walk around the backstage area looking for NWO Hollywood. They walk past a group of luchadors and they remain tight-lipped about the Black and White's whereabouts. This guy here looks like he completely regrets sitting in that spot and now he has to pretend to act natural. They end up locating the Black and White in a dressing room and check out the security guard doing the splits. Ball bag ripped completely in half. It gets pretty heated as the factions continue to fight while security struggles to maintain any kind of order. Sting goes looking for Bret Hart and he finds the Hitman in his own personal dressing room. The two fight for a moment with Sting getting the upper hand, but security rush in to break it up. When we come back from commercial break, Sting jumps in a forklift and he demolishes the NWO's limousine. If you think that was a little excessive, Kevin Nash and Lex Luger smash the windows and Big Sexy jumps on the flipped limo to whack it a few times with a sledgehammer. I don't know guys, I think it's already written off, but have at it if it makes you feel better. Sting even slashes the tires, for crying out loud. The Wolfpac's back causing mass destruction and they aren't done yet, not by a long shot. Raw kicks off with a match. Holy shit, it's X-Pac versus D'Lo for the European title. On Nitro, Hector Garza wrestles Damian. So D'Lo gets a shot at winning his European title back after winning that Four Corners match last week. Mark Henry and China are out here too, and it starts with D'Lo hitting X-Pac with a power slam, a leg lariat, a body slam, and a chin lock. That's it, Raw wins Reliving the War this week. That no good son of a bitch, who I don't know and have no reason to call a son of a bitch, but he serves China with more papers. China opens the letter and Mark Henry smiles at her for some reason. Something's going on here and China doesn't like it. That chin lock's still applied in the ring and D'Lo's definitely enjoying it. X-Pac gets out with a back suplex but he misses an elbow drop and D'Lo comes back with a diving forearm from the top rope. X-Pac takes a sidewalk slam and D'Lo tries to end it with a lowdown, but Kid moves out of the way and he's finally able to go on offense. He makes the most of it with a jump heel kick followed by a jumping clothesline. D'Lo finds himself in position for a Bronco Buster and X-Pac performs his signature move as the crowd goes nuts. X-Pac then gets tripped up by Mark Henry. He thinks it's a good idea to jump over the top rope, but Mark grabs him and X-Pac gets his back rammed into the ring post. D'Lo then performs his low down frog splash and D'Lo becomes a two-time European champion. DX are having a lot of problems right now and losing the European title only adds to those problems, but still though, great to see D'Lo win the championship back. On Nitro, Hector Garza was getting the better of Damian after around 2 minutes of action, the highlight of which being this tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. The match was then interrupted by Eddie Guerrero and the referee called for the bell. It's a no contest. Eddie wants to know what Eric Bischoff's done for these two guys ever since they got to WCW. The luchadors are packing 5 or 6 in a rental car and they're sharing hotel rooms while Eric Bischoff makes them fight each other week in and week out. The Latino wrestlers aren't able to catch a break. They aren't moving up the ladder because Eric Bischoff won't book them in matches against other people. And also, they aren't getting paid. The arena looks pretty full tonight, yet certain guys are still underpaid. The NWO are getting big money, they get the Learjets, they wrestle when they want against who they want, and they're always in the main events. Eddie can't change things alone and neither can Garza nor Damian, so Eddie wants La Raza to join up and form a new group, the Latino World Order. The crowd booed when the shirt got revealed and it really did sound like they were tired of yet another World Order faction. They were engaged throughout the promo, but the mood quickly changed when Eddie revealed his shirt. Damian and Garza put the shirts on. Eddie tells Eric Bischoff that the group will do what it takes to get their piece of the cake, and Eddie also tells Bischoff to kiss his ass. Mike Tenay then gets a word with Kevin Nash outside. Mike notes that Scott Hall was nowhere to be found earlier, and Nash says there's one in about 5 places he could be right now. So the Wolfpac are going on a pub crawl to find the bad guy and give him a good old-fashioned kicking. The Red and Black get in their limo, and the sesh begins on Monday Nitro. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler let us know a few matches we're going to see tonight on Raw, including Ken Shamrock vs Kane and The Rock vs Undertaker. We've also got cameras set up at Mr. McMahon's hospital bed and we'll check in with Vinnie Mac a little later on. Next though, it's a Headbangers promo, while over on Nitro, Psychosis takes on Billy Kidman for the cruiserweight title. A Headbangers promo? We don't get this too often, do we? Marc says the ICP have stuck their noses in the Headbangers business. Serious headbanger business. So the boys want Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J to come down to the ring for a fight. The Oddities show up first and the ICP follow. The Headbangers tell the Oddities to head to the back because this is between them and the Juggalos. And so the ICP get in the ring and they get completely wrecked. Double team moves including flapjacks and suplexes, a top rope powerbomb, chair shots right to the head, and a stage dive on a steel chair. Again, give them credit, they got in there and they took a beating for our pleasure. The Headbangers get out of the ring before the Oddities can grab them, and Thrasher says the ICP sucks, which to be fair gets a decent pop from the audience. Kidman vs Psychosis has the potential to be the match of the night over on Nitro, and I wouldn't be surprised if it steals the show. Kidman was using what would become Vampiro's music during this time period, and I always like this theme. Kinda sounds like a Smashing Pumpkins ripoff. Anyway, there's a little shoving after the initial lockup, and Kidman counters a hammerlock with a snapmare. Billy then performs an exploder suplex, and when it goes to the outside, Kidman wipes his opponent out with a plancha. Back in the ring, Psychosis comes back with a set-out gourd buster, and when Kidman gets up, he goes right back down with a diving spinning wheel kick. Psychosis then applies a sleeper hold, Billy fights out, and we see a drop kick from the cruiserweight champ, but Kidman gets too confident and he gets hip tossed right out of the ring, and Psychosis follows up with a leg drop to the outside. Great stuff. Kidman gets thrown into the steel steps, he takes a drop kick while standing beside the apron, and inside the ring the crowd try to will Billy back into the match, and it works. When Kidman hits Psychosis with a clothesline, the audience gets really loud, but the crowd gets silenced with a Psychosis back suplex. Psychosis then plays with fire when he applies sleeper hold number 2. He ends up applying a chin lock when sleeper 2 gets broken up, and Psychosis then goes for a powerbomb, so you know what that means. Kidman's going to counter with a facebuster. Happens every time. Kidman delivers his corner bulldog, but Psychosis kicks out at 2. Kidman then counters a back suplex with a set-out spinebuster, but again, it's only 2. Psychosis gets a chance to pull off a moonsault, and after this move, Psychosis says that's it over. He looks to put Billy away with a top rope Frankensteiner, but Billy holds on and Psychosis crashes to the mat. We then see the shooting star press, and Kidman retains the cruiserweight title. The kid's a sensation, no doubt about it. From jobber to smackhead to one of WCW's finest, absolutely outstanding. David Flair's shown in the audience again, and this time Tony Schiavone mentions that he's Ric Flair's son. As long as he stays on that side of the guardrail, we should be okay, guys. Nothing to worry about. Grab your rolling papers, the Warrior cuts a promo on Nitro next. On Raw, we visit Mr. McMahon in hospital. Vince is being a right grouchy bastard, and he begins to panic when the nurse says Mr. McMahon has a visitor, a big man who wants to have a word with the chairman. When Mick Foley walks through the door with balloons and chocolates, McMahon's demeanour totally changes. Poor Mick just wants to help his boss out, and Vince wants Mick to get lost. Mick brought Vince his favourite candies. The box only has one candy though, because Foley munched the rest of them on his way to the hospital. But Mick has some more surprises in store for Vinnie Mac. Some female entertainment, if you know what I mean, from a lady who does a wonderful trick with a dog. It's Yerple, the balloon-blowing clown. She's here because she heard Vince is feeling blue. She made him his very own rainbow, and she makes him a little dog too. Mick then disappears for a moment to give Vince another surprise. It's the debut of Mr. Socko. Mr. Socko heard about what happened to Vince, and he wants to kiss Vince's boo-boo to make it all better, but Vince loses it and he tells everyone to beat it.
Damn it, leave.
So good, even just reading it off this script that I wrote and just thinking about it again, it's so funny. I know not many people like to admit it today, but Mr. McMahon was such an entertaining character. Mick Foley's always been great, but he's really coming into his own during this time period too. We'll come back to Mr. McMahon though a little later on. On Nitro, Warrior says, you know what, he says the same thing he's been saying since arriving to WCW. The promo's directed at Hogan, and it's all about Hogan walking down the wrong path while the almighty squeaky clean Ultimate Warrior would never do such a thing. The Warrior's an angel, and he's all about the One Warrior Nation. He says the OWN is a revolution for a new generation. And remember, this revolution consists of getting Ed Leslie completely chonged and brainwashing him while he sits on the sofa playing Super Mario Kart. Warrior also says Hogan likes to run in a pack while the Warrior's just like Dave Bautista, he walks alone. 8 years ago, Warrior faced the challenge to prove the power of the supreme individual. Hogan only faced this challenge to feed his ego, but this battle at Halloween Havoc will be won on two fronts, mentally and physically. Warrior's more than capable of breaking Hogan physically, and Hogan's already mentally broken. At the pay-per-view, Hogan's gonna feel the power of the Ultimate Warrior, snort, snort, grunt, grunt, yeah, fucking brilliant. You know, fans were pretty hyped up when Warrior debuted, but you can already sense some diminishing returns as the weeks go on. Hopefully the two can have an absolute classic at Halloween Havoc though, and silence the non-believers. I'm very, very sure that's exactly what's gonna happen. Mike Tenay's following the Wolfpac's Hummer limousine like a crazy fanboy, but he wants to see if Big Kev gets his hands on Scott Hall. We'll be checking in with the Wolfpac a few times tonight, so strap yourselves in. We've got Vader vs Marc Mero on Raw. On Nitro, Scotty Steiner and Buff Bagwell cut a promo. So this is Vader's final match during the whole Monday Night War, so say goodbye to the big guy. We have watched his entire WWF run up until this point, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing me complain about how the company used him, so let's just enjoy his final match. Sable joins the commentary team for this one, and if you look closely, you'll notice that lady standing behind her, that woman who's been showing up to Raw shows and cheering for Sable. Sable says she wants to win the women's title, and hopefully by that point there'll be an actual physical belt for Sable to hold. My belt guy Hazard F5 has the info on this. The belt just wasn't made on time, seeing as the request was put in just after SummerSlam. So the women's belt we do end up seeing was thrown together by J-Mar using recycled ideas and materials from the Smoking Skull belt. It's pretty crazy. If you look closely, you'll see barbed wire around the front plate just like the Smoking Skull belt, and there's also this glass shatter design around the women's belt. Glass shattering, of course, being synonymous with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Anyway, Vader lands a few body shots and Marc decides to get out of the ring. On the outside, Jackie stops Vader from attacking her man and Vader laughs it off before returning to the ring, where Mero still gets clobbered anyway. Mero takes another break on the outside, he hides behind Jackie before throwing her into Vader, and the two then attack the big man while the referee lets it all slide. The match resumes in the ring where the fans begin a Sable chant. The two trade a few clotheslines and Vader gets the better of Mero. Vader then hits a splash and the match comes to an end when Jackie gets involved with a botchy crossbody. Vader scoops Jackie up on his shoulder and he puts her down very gently, but this gives Mero a chance to hit a low blow. Marc then delivers the Marvelocity and Mero defeats Vader on Raw. After the match, Jackie challenges Sable to get in the ring. Sable gets in and she ends up getting attacked after she slaps Marvelous Marc, and it ends with Jackie cutting Sable's hair. Jackie's pulling a Jeff Jarrett, it seems. I'll say it again, this women's division needs more competitors ASAP. Sable is popular and Jackie is very talented, but this feud can only continue for so long. On Nitro, Scott Steiner says Big Papa Pump's your hookup, holler if you hear me, for the very first time. He then says he's responsible for making the Steiner brothers famous, and at Halloween Havoc he's gonna prove it. The dog-faced gremlin's gonna get ran out of Las Vegas. Rick then appears on the rampway and he calls Scott and Buff a bunch of sissies. He then reminds Bagwell that it was in this arena where Rick almost broke his neck, and seeing as Buff made a joke out of the accident, Rick wants to bring someone to the ring who doesn't think it's funny at all. Judy Bagwell, Buff Bagwell's mother. Big Judy makes her way down to ringside before Rick hands her a mic. The crowd actually pops as she gets on the apron to rip into her own son, and Judy says Buff almost got paralysed in this very arena while she and Daddy Bagwell watched at home. Buff's parents sat at Buff's bedside for weeks. They read out thousands of fan letters to Buff, so Judy wants to know what her son's problem is and why is he acting like such a little brat. Judy reminds Buff that it was she who wheeled Buff out at the Georgia Dome, and Buff took her for a fool too, seeing as he was acting all along just to get one over on Rick Steiner. And guys, you can troll me all you want for saying this, Judy Bagwell right now is cutting a better promo than many of the full-timers on both the WWF and WCW rosters. She speaks like she actually means it. Buff says he made a choice, he chose NWO Hollywood, and if it wasn't for Buff Bagwell, then Judy Bagwell wouldn't be able to eat. Judy gets in the ring, and after exchanging a few words, she smacks her boy across the face and the crowd love it. She then goes for Scotty, but Steiner says Judy isn't his mum and Scott will beat the shit out of her if push comes to shove, so Rick jumps in to help Judy out. The brothers fight back up the rampway while Judy drags Buff by the ear. She throws him back in the entranceway and she turns around to bask in the pop she just received. Again, I don't care what you say, this was great and the audience couldn't have reacted any better. Judy Bagwell, future WCW World Champion. Rick Steiner takes on Bryan Adams next on Nitro. On Raw, Owen Hart scheduled to take on Edge. The Raw match actually doesn't take place. Owen comes down wearing his regular clothes and he grabs a microphone. Owen says the wrestling business has been his whole life. He looked into Dan Severn's eyes after the piledriver and he saw his wife and 2 children. Owen says he never meant for anyone to get hurt. He's sorry for what he did. And Owen gets so upset that he drops the microphone in the corner and he walks away from the ring. So Owen forfeits the match and it looks like he's in no rush to go back to wrestling anytime soon. After a commercial break, Michael Cole tries to catch up with Owen, but Owen says he's done, it's over. Also, before Owen's promo, Jim Ross explained that the mystery man who keeps showing up during Edge's matches is actually Edge's younger brother, Christian. Why he's showing up on WWF TV though is still a mystery. On Nitro, Bryan Adams lends Scott Steiner a hand when dealing with Rick at the entranceway during a commercial break. We come back to see the matches already began in the ring. Scott Steiner chokes Rick on the middle rope and James J. Bebe Dillon decides to remove Scott from the ringside area. Seems fair enough. Adams applies a little pressure to the dog-faced gremlin's chin. Rick then gets floored with a punch. We see Bryan Adams' wonky piledriver, and there's a nerve pinch right there from Adams. Top tier wrestling, folks. Top tier. Sidewalk slam from Bryan Adams, body slam from Bryan Adams. Rick finally gets a chance to fight back and... old Bryan got lucky there, that was close. The match ends with a DDT from Rick followed by a Steiner Bulldog. A pretty bad match, all things considered. We then join Mike Tenay and the Wolfpac at pub number 1. The boys are looking for Scott Hall of course, and Nash thinks he might be here. They have a look over at the pool tables, but the bad guy isn't sinking any balls today it seems. So Scott isn't here and the hunt continues on. Next stop, the bar down the street. Hollywood Hogan cuts a promo next on Nitro while Kane and Ken Shamrock do battle on Raw. Shamrock vs Kane sounds like a bit of a mismatch, but let's see what happens. Kenny Boy goes for the legs early on and he pulls off this leg whip takedown that looked okay. But Kane scoops Kenny Boy up and Shamrock takes a backbreaker. Shamrock gets whipped into the corner at high speed, and when he tries to go for a Hurricane Rana, he ends up getting powerbombed straight to hell. Ken then gets choked out, he takes a short arm clothesline, and when he tries to fight back, he takes another clothesline as the destruction of the world's most dangerous man continues. Kane then squeezes Ken's face like it's a giant, oversized orange or something, and when Ken fights back, he again gets put right back down with a knee to the midsection. We see some chin action from the Big Red Machine, and the story's the exact same when Shamrock tries to make a comeback. He just gets put right back down again. Kane was doing absolutely fine here. It looked like Shamrock didn't have any chance at all, but for some reason the Undertaker walks down the ringside, and keep in mind the brothers have to fight each other at Judgment Day. The Undertaker watches on as Ken tries again to make a comeback. Shamrock manages to pull off a Hurricane Rana, but when he tries to drop Kane's arm, he ends up taking another clothesline. Kane then goes upstairs for his diving clothesline, but the Undertaker gets on the apron and things quickly fall apart. Taker shakes the ropes when getting back down from the apron, and this causes the Big Red Machine to smash his big red nuts on the top turnbuckle. Undertaker then walks back up the ramp, and Shamrock beats Kane after a belly-to-belly from the top rope. Undertaker's being sneaky, guys. There's no way that wasn't intentional. It's a big win for Shamrock tonight though, and unlike last week, the crowd were actually behind the world's most dangerous man. On Nitro, it's the same promo we have heard over these past few weeks. The Warrior's afraid of Hogan, he's been running away from Hogan, and Hollywood tells Warrior to come to the ring for a fight right now, but the Warrior doesn't show up. Bischoff says this is an invitation for any cartoon characters to get in the ring, but Warrior declines Eric's invitation. Hogan says that the Warrior's contractually obligated to come to the ring at Halloween Havoc and face his biggest fear. Warrior will drop to his knees and actually have a listen.
In the middle of the ring at Halloween Havoc and says, please, Woodster, don't beat me anymore.
He's really trying to get this Wood thing over, isn't he? Fucking Woodster. Hogan's the god of wrestling. We should all worship him every night. Hogan's gonna rewrite history at Halloween Havoc because Warrior hid for 8 years, and Hogan's now out to bury his old enemy. Warrior's just a stepping stone for Hogan to get his world title back. NWO for life. Too sweet. Thanks, Woodman. Val Venis takes on Gangrel next on Raw. On Nitro, it's Chris Kanyon versus Diamond Dallas Page. Edge's little brother comes to the ring with Gangrel, while Terry Runnels comes to the ring with Val Venis. Venis says Detroit State was once home to the legendary Magic Johnson, but tonight, with Val Venis in town, it's home to the real Magic Johnson. Very good. Christian watches on as Venis goes down at the opening bell and he gets kneed in the face by Gangrel. Val fires back with a spine buster and Gangrel takes a few knees to the midsection before getting put down with a Russian leg sweep. As Gangrel performs an arm drop suplex, Jim Ross explains that these aren't 45-year-old men dueling with microphones. These are youngsters who will make mistakes in the ring, but that's what makes it so exciting to watch. Everything's been crisp inside the ropes up until this point though, as Venis delivers a big boot and Gangrel comes back with a back body drop and a clothesline. And then Edge appears to confront his little brother Christian. Edge says, "What are you doing with him?" And at that very moment, Gangrel misses a baseball slide, so he slaps Edge in the face instead before hitting him with a DDT. Remember what Jim Ross just said. Gangrel and Christian attack Edge. We're seeing more brother-on-brother violence, brother, and it's sad to see. But Val Venis wins via countout and he begins to enjoy his in-ring celebration with Terry. The movie usher from Terry's past then shows up. He delivers a letter to Venis and Mrs. Runnels, and the contents of said letter seem to upset Val Venis. Goldust music plays in the arena, and Goldust says Venis just got an invitation to Goldust's world premiere next week. The bizarre one's coming back to WWF television, it seems, so that's something to look forward to in the next episode of Reliving the War. Back at the hospital, Mr. McMahon isn't too happy about the care he's been receiving, so he demands to see a different nurse, and he also wants something for his pain. Oh, Vince is going to get something for the pain, alright. On Nitro, Page almost steals a victory right at the opening bell when Kanyon gets slammed off the middle rope, but Chris kicks out. Page tries again when Chris argues with the referee, but it's another kick out at 2. DDP shoves Kanyon and Chris complains about hair pulling. The two then trade wrist locks and the exchange ends with DDP performing a belly-to-belly suplex. Kanyon gets knocked out of the ring where he's greeted by Lodi. Lodi's holding a sign that says "Raven, take Lodi back," but Page has no time to deal with this goon too, so Lodi and Kanyon get taken out with a plancha. DDP gets back in the ring and Raven strikes. Raven pulls off a good looking diamond cutter on Dallas, but DDP still kicks out when Kanyon tries to pin him. So Kanyon pulls off his middle rope famouser before choking Dallas in the corner. Kanyon drives DDP's head into the mat before applying a devastating violent chin lock. Page gets out and he has to counter a Death Valley driver attempt. His backslide attempt fails, but he's able to floor Kanyon with a clothesline. The crowd counts along as Kanyon gets his head smacked on the top turnbuckle. Kanyon then takes a back suplex. We see the pancake from DDP, and Raven then gets on the apron, but he ends up quickly getting knocked down again. The match ends when Kanyon performs a neckbreaker and Page replies with a tilt-a-word slam. Dallas signals for the cutter, but Raven and Lodi get in the ring and DDP takes a beating. Just when you think no one's going to help Dallas, his Halloween Havoc opponent arrives to Nitro and the noise inside the arena is insane. Goldberg spears Kanyon, he slaps the shit out of Lodi before hitting him with a jackhammer while Dallas pulls off a diamond cutter on Raven. Goldberg and Page then bump into each other and we get a tense stare down between the champ and the number one contender. So tense that JJ Dillon has to step in to make sure a fight doesn't break out. Gotta say, I'm looking forward to watching this match again for Reliving the War. It's gonna be good. Mike Tenay and the Wolfpac continue their mission by visiting the new Brooklyn Tavern. It's a very awkward bit of TV where these big dudes with big muscles walk through the bar while the locals look at the lads like they're aliens from another planet. One guy even tries to get a high five from Big Kev and Kev's like, "I'm not touching you, you filthy peasant." Scott Hall isn't here, the bad guy has standards. So after walking up and down the bar, the Wolfpac get back in their vehicle to visit pub number 3. Al Snow takes on Jeff Jarrett on Raw while the Disciple takes on Lenny Lane on Nitro. This OWN stuff's such an upgrade for the booty man. It doesn't take long for the Jarrett and Snow match to go to the outside, and Al's able to pull off his springboard sidekick with the help of a steel chair. Commissioner Slaughter then comes to the ring and he wants the ref to give him head, but the ref says, "Ew, not today, Chief." Snow notices Slaughter and Jarrett takes this opportunity to hit Al from behind with a steel chair, and Sarge watches on as Al gets thrown into the ring steps and into the barricade. When the two get in the ring, Snow performs an enziguri. Jarrett then misses a corner attack, and this allows Al to lift head and swing it at Jarrett, but Jeff ducks out of the way. Still, Jarrett gets put on the mat following a scoop slam, and Snow goes to the top rope. That no good Commissioner Slaughter shakes the ropes and Al gets crotched on the top turnbuckle. That's going to be a DQ finish caused by the company commissioner, and it's also very similar to the Ken and Shamrock finish. It's not great, is it? Slaughter seems pretty pleased with himself, though to be fair, Al Snow looks pretty happy too. It's all good. On Nitro, Oled Leslie put down his blunt for a few minutes in order to take out Lenny Lane, and look at Lenny acting like the Ultimate Warrior. I can't tell the difference. Booty Man does the same thing because he's the Warrior's bestest friend after all, and Lenny's sneak attack has no effect. The power of the Warrior, ladies and gents, it knows no limits. Lenny takes a big boot, and remember I talked about how guys like Owen, Bret and X-Pac took brilliant chest first bumps in the corner? Well, look at Lenny Lane. It's one of those spots that only really looks good if you really go for it, and that's probably why not many people do it. Lane takes a big hip toss and he gets thrown out of the ring. When he gets back inside, he takes a clothesline, and the crowd boo the Disciple when he starts acting like the Ultimate Warrior. I know I poke fun at the Booty Man, but this is absolutely stupid. Disciple pulls off a chartbuster, and that's the end of the match. Brilliant. Booty Man then grabs a mic and he says he's done carrying Hollywood's bags. He's now his own man, now and forever. Disciple then heads back up the ramp, but the Woodmaster gives chase, and we go to the backstage area where Hogan's in hot pursuit. He ends up in a locker room that has a big old mirror, and we can see the Warrior behind the glass. Hogan can see him, the commentators can see him, Bischoff cannot see him. Bischoff's acting like Hogan's going crazy, but if we can see the Warrior, and if everyone else can see the Warrior, that actually means that Eric Bischoff's the one who lost his mind. Think about it for a moment. Anyway, Warrior just smiles and laughs while Hogan starts losing his mind. Hogan says he's right there, and he asks Warrior if he thinks this is funny, but Eric thinks Wood from the Hood has gone insane. A very memorable moment from this rivalry, and it's also absolutely ridiculous. I love it. The Wolfpac pull up to the last pub and they ask these absolute madmen if Scott Hall's inside. These snitches say, yeah, he's in there. And so Nash walks in, and right enough, he finds Scott Hall. Kev gets the best of his old friend, and the two end up fighting on top of a pool table. They then end up in the restroom, but we don't see what happens inside. The door opens up and Scott's got his head put down a toilet, and that's it. That's the end of the Wolfpac's journey, for now. Remember that Sting's got a match with Bret Hart coming up, so the Stinger's waiting back in the arena for the big main event. We've got the Road Dogg versus Mark Henry next on Raw. On Nitro, Eric Bischoff wants to trash Ric Flair. Road Dogg's replaced Billy Gunn with a blow-up doll named Mona, and he cuts his usual introductory promo.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Excuse me. Yes? I'm looking for someone who knows about Chinese people. Do you know anyone?
Shut up.
Jerry Lawler scooped up one of those letters that China got served, and apparently Mark Henry's suing China for harassment. Harassment of a sexual nature. Yeah, it's a questionable thing to bring into a wrestling storyline for sure, but what's not questionable is how much this audience loves the Road Dogg. They pop for the shake, rattle and roll, and they love the Road Dogg's knee drop, and there's a loud round of boos when Henry comes back with a power slam. Mark takes control by launching his opponent from one corner to the other. Road Dogg takes a clothesline, and he gets a mouthful of Sable's hair too when on the mat. Lovely. D'Lo then trips Road Dogg up, and this forces X-Pac to take action. D'Lo finds himself with his back turned to the rampway, and that's when China shows up and D'Lo gets a forearm in the face. X-Pac takes this opportunity to hit Mark with an X-Factor, so Mark didn't remember the golden rule. Don't interfere in someone's match if you have a match lined up later yourself. Road Dogg wins via pinfall, the audience loved it, and it's a win that DX desperately needed. On Nitro, Eric Bischoff comes to the ring and he says Hulk Hogan's absolutely fine. There's nothing to be concerned about, and thank God for that because I was getting worried. Bischoff then turns his attention to Ric Flair. Bischoff says the Nature Boy won't be here tonight and he's just about to talk bad about Slick Rick, but then Arn Anderson shows up and he reminds Eric that Columbia is a horseman town. Flair is here tonight, the champ's ready to come to the ring, and here comes Reid Flair with his excellent haircut. They don't make him like that anymore. Anderson and Reid get in the ring. Bischoff's annoyed at these Flair kids showing up to Nitro, but seeing as Reid's the centre of all this controversy, the little Nature Boy wants to tell Eric something. He says he's here to handle his dad's light work, and Bischoff thinks Arn's lost his mind. Reid then shows his amateur skills a little, and Bischoff's not impressed. He says he's got no time for some snot-nosed Flair, nor his fathead friend, so these two bozos need to hit the bricks. Reid then takes Bischoff down, not once but twice, and look at David Flair, he doesn't look too thrilled about this, does he? Reid styles and profiles. Anderson tells Bischoff to call the juvenile authorities because he just got taken down twice by a 10-year-old. Young Reid then throws up the symbol of excellence, and I'll bet Ric Flair was proud as punch when all this went down. When we come back from commercial break, Eric tries to get Ric Flair on the phone, but he ends up getting Beth Flair, Ric's wife, instead. She badmouths Eric by the sound of things, and then the Nature Boy shows up and he makes his way down to the ring. Rick gets inside the ropes, the NWO show up, but the Horsemen then make an appearance and the NWO gets taken out. Rick and Reid strut around the ring. David gets in the ring too to join in on the celebration, and it's another moment that fans in the arena absolutely loved. Raw ends this week with Undertaker vs. The Rock. On Nitro, it's Sting vs. Bret Hart. Before we check out Rock vs. Taker, we need to check back in with Mr. McMahon. Vince is still giving the nurse a hard time and he says he can't wait to get out of this bed. The nurse finishes taking McMahon's blood pressure and she wants to know if the doctor in the room has anything to say.
Oh, I'll take it from here, nurse.
Stone Cold Steve Austin attacks Vinnie Mac and it's absolutely glorious. Punches to the head, punches to the injured ankle and foot, and then there's the bedpan shot. The sound it makes is absolutely perfect, and Austin said he practiced where to hit Vince in order to get that very sound. McMahon gets shocked with a defibrillator, and it ends with Austin giving his boss a forced enema. It's another prime moment of the McMahon vs. Austin feud, and we're nowhere near finished with this rivalry either. We have still got a lot to come. In the arena, Rock and Undertaker make their entrances, and you just know Undertaker's winning this one after what happened last week. It's a shame, but that's the way it works most times. It's all Undertaker to start us off, and like Ken Shamrock earlier, The Rock gets shut down as soon as he tries to fight back. After Undertaker hits the jumping clothesline, we see D'Lo and Mark Henry come down to the ring. They try to intimidate the Undertaker, but when Taker gets sent over the top rope, D'Lo and Henry get a little intimidated themselves. The Big Red Machine then shows up, and Rocky's teammates end up hightailing it back up the ramp, and when Rock notices Kane at ringside, the dead man takes advantage and Rock gets chokeslammed. The Undertaker chokes Rock at the ropes. He performs old school, but Rock kicks out at 2. We then see some chin action from the Phenom, but Rock gets out with a back suplex. The match then goes to the entranceway where we see the usual guardrail bumps. Rock gets thrown into the ring steps before it gets back in the ring, and Rock takes a lot of punishment in the corner. The People's Champ is getting completely destroyed, and again, when he tries to fight back, he just gets shut right back down. Rock gets clotheslined, he takes a big boot, but Rock's able to throw Taker off the top rope when Taker goes for old school again, and this is going to be Rock's only chance to build a comeback. The Phenom takes a swinging neckbreaker before going for a tombstone. Rock counters with a Russian leg sweep, and he delivers the People's Elbow. The Rock, for some reason, doesn't go for a cover. Instead, he hits Taker with a back elbow, and this leads to the referee taking a bump. Both men then go down after a double clothesline, and this is when Kane grabs a steel chair. Kane doesn't swing for Rocky though. Oh no, he swings for the Undertaker, and Taker ends up walking right into a rock bottom, but there's no referee to count the pinfall. Rock tries to wake Hebner up, but the Undertaker gets to his feet and Rock gets tombstoned. The Undertaker wins the match, and he looks pretty pissed off at what his brother just pulled off moments ago. The main event should have been better, but it's still better than what happened on Nitro. As a matter of fact, the Nitro match doesn't even take place. A classic bait and switch from WCW, ladies and gents. Bret Hart decides to walk back up the rampway after getting one look at Sting, and the Icon ends up chasing Bret backstage. The two then have a backstage brawl that does have some good moments, but you can hear the crowd booing because, you know, they expected a wrestling match. Bret gets smacked with a large whiteboard and he also gets thrown into a vending machine. The two enter a much bigger and more open room where Bret overcomes Sting's onslaught. In his excellency suplexes Sting through a table before whacking him with a large plastic trash can. Bret then targets Sting's knee with a steel chair and he closes the chair over Sting's knee and he hits it with a garbage can. And just when you think Sting's down and out, he comes back by pushing a storage container into the Hitman. The two end up grabbing long steel poles because now's the right time for a good old-fashioned joust. The two trade shots, Sting chokes the Hitman out, we see the Scorpion deathlock, and we can still hear the crowd booing in the background as the fight comes to an end when Doug Dillinger shows up. Sting got the better of Bret, but the Icon's limping around after the fight. He doesn't look good. Nitro fades to black, and there you have it. Not the Sting vs Bret match we were expecting. A decent brawl for sure, but not what we were expecting. Both shows had underwhelming main events in my opinion, proving that you can have the biggest names in the world having matches, but if the booking's off, then it's still going to fall a little flat. Nitro had the better in-ring action this week, but I'm going to go with Raw just because of the whole Vince McMahon thing in hospital. A part of me did want to give it to Nitro this week, but if I was asked on the spot which show people should watch on October 5th, 1998, I'd have to say Raw. Raw's on 73 points, Nitro's on 64, and we've got 17 ties. In the TV ratings, it was very close, but Raw won with a 4.6 while Nitro scored a 4.5. Next week, we'll see a tournament on Raw to crown a new IC champion, seeing as Triple H is still injured. We've got the return of Goldust, but more importantly, we've also got the return of Steve motherfucking Blackman. On Nitro, we find out who's been laughing at WCW superstars over these past few weeks. We have Raven versus Chris Jericho inside the ring, and Eric Bischoff's on a mission to keep Ric Flair out of the arena. Join me next week for more Reliving the War. Thank you so much for watching, and please take care.